Hey everybody, welcome to this video. I'm Amber Melanie Smith, and I just wanted to take a moment because we are getting into hurricane season and a hurricane is already wreaking havoc on the United States coast to talk a little bit about disaster relief, specifically some special insights about how you can plan for disasters and how you can help before, during, and after disasters to help those affected. And these insights are coming from nonprofits who are on the ground, who are in the field helping out and have helped with these situations in the past. These are some special things that they wish the public knew, so I'm here to share them with you today. I hope this helps. So real quick, a little bit about me. I have worked in the nonprofit field for over 10 years. I've worked with many different organizations who've played a number of different roles in disaster relief. And I personally have helped organize volunteers on a very small scale for some disasters and have participated in volunteer service in disaster relief as well. I make different videos every week about how everyday folks can help change the world, how they can help other people, how they can participate in service or starting a nonprofit. And so helping out in a disaster relief situation is really in line with that. I hope you get a chance to check out the rest of my channel, and if you like what you see, hopefully subscribe and give this video a like too. Through my day-to-day work, I work with hundreds of different nonprofits in my local community, and sometimes I'm in contact with organizations around the whole country as well. I know that disasters look different from the perspective of those who are on the ground working in these organizations, and so I thought it would be helpful to get their insights, their tips, and their strategies, things that they wish people out there in the community knew when it comes to disasters and disaster relief, because they're on the ground, they're helping, they're doing it. So what are they seeing that the general public doesn't get to see, and how does that translate to ways that you guys can help out these causes in a disaster relief situation? So I polled many nonprofit staff people and leaders across the country and asked them, what are some things that you wish people in the community knew about disaster relief? And as I was looking through the answers, several common themes emerged, so I'm going to share those with you in the hopes that it will help you out in helping others. I just want to take a moment to thank those nonprofits who weighed in on this and who offered some insights. Thank you for your time and for contributing your feedback. So the first common theme that emerged from the feedback nonprofits shared with me is stuff related to how people can plan. More widely shared information includes things like evacuation routes, where to find shelters, etc. But there were two things that I thought were really interesting that nonprofits brought up they wished people planned better for. So they are, number one, planning for your pets. Knowing which shelters in your area can take pets and also which hotels in the area are pet friendly. The feedback I got was that pets are sometimes an afterthought, but they're members of your family, so you want to make sure that you are thinking of them within your plan too. The second insight about how to plan that emerged that I thought was very interesting was knowing your neighbors. Obviously, you're going to be counting on people around you and they're going to be counting on you in a disaster situation. So it's really smart to know who is in your community, who's on your block, if they need help, if they can help you. So knowing who's around you, knowing your community, and forming relationships in advance and over the long term is just a smart thing to do. The majority of the insights that nonprofits I talked to shared were related to how people in the community can help before, during, and after a disaster situation. One thing I've heard a lot from the nonprofits that I've had the privilege of working with and from other organizations across the country is that disaster recovery is a long-term effort. There's a lot of media when a hurricane or some other disaster is on the way, but once that fades away, people tend to forget that the needs are still there. My state, North Carolina, had Hurricane Florence last year, just about a year ago actually, and we are still recovering from that hurricane, just as another hurricane and probably others behind it are on their way right now. So in order to make disaster recovery and relief more effective, there are things that everybody can be doing before and after a disaster to help out people who have been affected. There are two big things that people can do before a disaster, so technically around the year, that can help us be able to more effectively manage a disaster when it does happen. The first is that if disaster relief work is of interest to you, something you're passionate about, get trained. Get trained in shelter management, in first aid, in disaster relief services, because that way there will be many more opportunities for you to help in urgent situations right after a disaster strikes that you know you have the training for, so you can help in that higher level way. I'll share in the description below some links to ways you might get trained, some free certifications out there. If disaster relief is something you're interested in, there are a lot of opportunities for you to get that training and join a pool of volunteers who will be called upon in the event of disaster. The second thing we can all do as a community and as individuals to help with effective disaster relief and recovery over the long term is to think of and plan for under-resourced communities. When a state calls for evacuation, many people have cars and the resources to be able to leave, but many people don't. So when we are making disaster relief plans, we should think about those who might not have access to transportation or might not have the means to leave in advance so that we can help them properly and in a timely fashion when a disaster does hit. There are also several ways that you can help out during and immediately after a disaster. You might have heard commonly said that nonprofits in a disaster relief situation really need cash more than things. So I want to take a moment to address that and explain why that's the case, because I think that there's a lot of mistrust between community members and organizations who are on the ground doing this disaster relief work about this, and I think I can help sort of explain why it's a problem so that we can all get on the same page and help each other out. In disaster relief work and in nonprofits in general, there's a concern from the general public that money might be mismanaged or misused. But I know from working with people in the nonprofit sector that generally we're all just doing the best we can and trying to make the most impact with the very, very limited resources that we have. Not to say that one person or one organization could mess it up for the rest of us nonprofits by having some kind of scandal or a situation where they are mismanaging funds, but in general, that is the exception and not the norm. So that's where I think there's an inclination to want to give items and donations of things instead of cash. But to help you understand why a nonprofit might need cash instead of things, I like to use a metaphor of asking your friends to help you move in. Okay, so imagine you are moving into a new home and you would love your friends to help you move out of your old home and into the new one. So you put out a call for help to your friends. And on the day you are set to move in, for some reason you just have this enormous response and like 50 people are showing up at your house and they all want to help, and you're really like excited and you feel very grateful, but you're also super overwhelmed because now you have 50 people at your house, all with great intentions, but you just do not know what to do with 50 people. You do not have the space for 50 people. You don't know how to organize 50 people. You don't have enough stuff for 50 people to do. You don't know if the 50 people have the right skills in order to help you effectively move into the new home. And you're on a timeline, so you have to complete this whole moving process in just an hour or two and figure out how to manage all of these people at once. Now add to that and pretend that all 50 people brought a huge truck full of boxes. You only needed 10 boxes, but now they've brought you 500 boxes. So now on top of moving and organizing all of these people, you have to figure out what to do with 500 boxes, and you have to stop and figure out how you're going to recycle the boxes or use the boxes when you don't actually need all those boxes in the midst of trying to finish your move-in task on a very short timeline. So you can kind of see where I'm going with this. Obviously, in this situation, moving in is disaster relief work. Right after a disaster, trained professionals who are doing this work have to deal with some very urgent needs, medical needs, evacuation needs, and they would love the help of people who have that training that they can manage effectively. But if they have a lot of people show up or a lot of items coming in, that presents an extra challenge to them that they are just not prepared to deal with while they're trying to evacuate people or make sure that they're not going to starve or drown or have some sort of urgent situation. I have heard so many horror stories from the nonprofits I worked with of having a mountain pile of donations that they just didn't have room for, that were blocking access to shelters. One nonprofit I talked to mentioned that people were trying to donate prom dresses after a hurricane, and that just wasn't what they needed at the time. So, it's wonderful to want to generously donate your items, but you have to think about what's going to be the right fit. And if you are interested in donating something like a prom dress or other items, there are many nonprofits who could use those things and be able to handle them and manage them and get them into the hands of people who need them that are not in the middle of dealing with a disaster crisis. So going back to the whole thing about donating cash versus donating items, give cash if you can. If you're still uncomfortable giving cash, the nonprofits that I talked to said that gift cards are just equally as good. So gas gift cards, food gift cards, these things will help them be able to quickly and efficiently get the people they are serving urgently the items that they need. If you don't have the cash to give, there are many other ways that you can support disaster relief efforts by giving other things like your blood or your time. If you don't have disaster relief training, there are still many ways you can volunteer your time in a recovery situation. Immediately after a disaster, during that first part of recovery, several nonprofits that I talked to said that gutting flooded homes is a very urgent volunteer need. In the midst of a disaster, helping take care of the people affected is also really important. So we're talking about helping with translation skills, helping do laundry, helping watch children, meal delivery, driving people to medical appointments. All of these things are really critical needs that shelters and other organizations have that don't necessarily require disaster relief training in advance. As the urgent disaster relief needs start to die down, one nonprofit mentioned that helping people affected file insurance claims would be a very, very helpful service to them. So if you're great with paperwork and know your way around a form, that could be a great way for you to lend your services. The final big thing that I've heard so many times that nonprofits really reinforced when I talked to them recently about this was that disaster relief and recovery, again, as I said before, it takes a long time. So just because you're not seeing it in the news that week, it doesn't mean it's not happening. Please keep people in mind and volunteering and donating throughout the year in mind, because it takes a long time to recover from these big disasters, and we might be seeing more of them. If you're helping with disaster relief or have other ideas on how people can help, please leave those in the comments below. Let's have a conversation. Let's see who can help today. If making an impact is something that's really important to you, that gives you a sense of purpose, don't forget to check out my Facebook group, Change the World or Bust. I have conversations going with amazing people from across the country and in other countries as well about changing the world, making an impact, nonprofit work, social enterprise, you name it. I hope this video was helpful in helping you think through some ways you might be able to be of service and help people around you during the upcoming hurricanes that are already affecting our country. I hope that if you liked this video, you'll give it a thumbs up and check out the rest of my channel for more ways that you can help make a difference in the world and be a change maker.